Hey, welcome to Road Testament. Today we're talking M cars, BMW's M5s and M6s, the latest. I spoke with Matt Russell at Laguna Seca for the launch earlier this month. And also, Chris Harris obviously drove a couple of those cars. We're going to be seeing some clips from him. And Nelson Ireson from Motor Authority is with us by Skype. So hit us up on @Drive on Twitter. Let us know what you think. And Nelson Ireson coming up in a bit. Couple of seconds. And now. Hey, Nelson, good to see you, man.
Hey, Mike. Good to see you, too.
Yeah. I just saw you at Laguna, and your review of the M5 and the M6 just went up. Did you do those separately, or did you kind of conflate the two of those?
I put them together because, the M6 is like a smaller, lighter M5.
Yes, and so it was one of those track days where we got to basically do lapping all day long, and that's where we get to see who the real track whores in the automotive journalism field are. And you are definitely, sir, one of the biggest track whores that I know. And that's a good thing because it gave you some more perspective on those cars. What are your first impressions of those two cars?
First impressions are, they are big cars, right? That's the way all cars are going. I mean, look at the Scion FRS. Super BRZ. They're called super light cars, and they weigh 2,700 pounds. That's what the S2000 weighed when it came out, and people called it Porky. Right? Perspective shift. So these are big cars, but first impressions, especially on track, is that they don't feel like big cars.
Yeah.
And whether that's a perspective shift too, or just BMW's job in tuning the cars dynamically, I don't know, but they really don't feel 4,000 pounds plus.
Yeah. So we'll go to Matt Russell now. Matt talks a little bit about the increase in size of the 5 Series over the years, over the generations, and also what the company's done to make it drive like a smaller car.
So with every generation of M5, obviously it's based on the 5 Series. The 5 Series has grown to meet the needs of the customer. The newest 5 Series is now the size of a 7 Series from 20 years ago. So we have a growing 5 Series, we have a growing M5. What do we do? Well, we maintain the balance, both static and dynamic balance, that were introduced on the very first generation of M5. And we maintain that balance by using aluminum wherever we can to try to preserve the 50-50 weight distribution. The engines have gotten somewhat larger and heavier in some cases, so we have fought with aluminum blocks and aluminum front subframes to try to move weight aft when necessary. As a result, we still have a very close to 50-50 weight distribution, and of course that static balance serves very, very good, pays a really good dynamic dividend once you're rolling on the track or even on the back roads. The M engineers spend a tremendous amount of time trying to control the footprint of the car. These cars are in development for 5 years, and the details like the bushings and the actual the tire compound itself, it's not just your average Michelin, it's actually developed with the engineers, between M engineers and Michelin engineers. It's somewhat BMW proprietary in its blend, inner, middle, and outer shoulders. We try very hard to keep that footprint under control. These are larger cars, they've had to grow, and in order to still have the maneuverability, in fact the best that it's ever been, and the braking and acceleration performance as well, we work on bushing tuning. We tune of course the chassis itself is stiffer than ever before. It's stiffer than race cars of 20 years ago, and so we try to capitalize on that. Probably the biggest difference we've made, and the reason we can rigidly mount the rear subframe into the unibody of the car, is the damper technology. Our ability to recalibrate the dampers on the fly and to better control the actual movement, the vertical movement of the wheel underneath of each of the 4 wheels underneath the car. That would probably be the biggest, most recent major advantage that we've had, or advance that we've had in terms of chassis and body control.
So Nelson, what is an M car, right? I mean, so that's kind of the big question. What is an M car to you?
Well, to me, an M car should be the ultimate expression of BMW's best slogan ever, ultimate driving machine, right? And that means not just on street, not just on the track, right? It should be the perfect marriage of the two. A car you can live with, taking the wife to dinner, picking up the groceries, and trail braking and heel-toe downshifting into turn 2 at Laguna Seca.
Yeah, interestingly enough, that's exactly what Chris Harris and Matt Russell from BMW said too. I kind of put both of these clips together. One of them's from Chris Harris's review of the M5, and from Matt Russell at Laguna Seca. Let's take a look at that.
Well, for this program at Laguna Seca, we like we do for all of our programs, we bring the M3 along. The M3 is the reference standard for everything we know about chassis, kinematics, driving dynamics, the way the car is supposed to feel and behave, throttle control, braking control, and everything else, modulation. A lot of people then are able to drive the M3 and then drive the M5 and M6 back to back, and you'll see that M DNA, just like BMW DNA, is in each of the products. Even if you go into the MSAVs, the X5M and X6M, just ask Matt Farah, the M DNA is intact, and you get that entire package. You get very similar performance in all of the cars. I mean, you have more straight line in some cars, more braking in others, more braking while turning, and yet still others. There are differences, and the character is a little bit different in each one, but the car will give you a very predictable experience no matter which one of the M cars you get into. You're going to have neutral handling, linear control, incredible responsiveness, good noises, and really good ergonomics and feel.
The F10M M5 reminds us why we love this particular recipe for a motor car. It's quite simple, really. Take a load of power, 552 horsepower in this case, 502 foot-pounds of torque, throw it in quite an ordinary looking body style, and you have the car for every opportunity. In a straight line, this thing will stay with very, very fast sports cars, and it's just as comfortable as a normal 5 Series. It's just the perfect recipe for an everyday car.
Remember, in Europe, the M5 serves the purpose of being a city connector on the Autobahn. We're going as far as possible, as quickly as possible, and really as efficiently as possible. The philosophy of an M car has always been that if you had to choose one car to live with for the rest of your life that has to do everything, it has to be versatile enough to live with every day and go to work and carry clients, and yet you still want to be able to drive it on the back roads and the racetrack on the weekends, it has to be an M car. That could be an X5M, or it could be an M5 or an M6. They're probably the very, very best at that. And of course the M3 for one person, maybe two people who commute or go to work and then go to the racetrack on the weekends, there's still nothing better. So every M car does need to meet that mission.
So Nelson, the idea of a usable track car that's also like a city connector is kind of really was something that started in Europe, and going back through the generations, obviously the M cars have changed quite a bit. I mean, what's your favorite one of the previous ones, and what's your take on the evolution of those, the M5s?
Favorite M car? That's a tough question. Yeah, I'd have to say my personal favorite M car is the E36 M3 sedan. I like it more than the coupe just because it has 4 doors and it's still just as fast.
Right.
The linear power delivery, the sort of direct control feel. Oddly enough, the gear shift feels exactly the same in the E36 M3 as it does in the brand new F10 M5, which I don't know if that's good for the M3 or bad for the M5, but it's just, for me, the full package.
Well, that may be the only thing consistent in the past 15 or 20 years of M cars. If you were to compare the last generation M5 to this one, or actually if you want to go 2 generations, the E36 or the E39 M5 to this one, what do you think have been the biggest changes?
It really all comes back to size. The E39 was almost the same size as the current M3.
Yeah.
Right. The whole line has just shifted up, just as the whole industry has shifted up in size like that, and that reflects in weight. That reflects in wheelbase, track width, all fundamental things that go into a car's both road comfort and its handling.
The Porsche 911 has had the benefit of being its own platform for all those years, and these are cars that you have to start with a car that may not have been designed from the outset to be a sports car, right? So you're beholden to what the market wants out of these cars, and what the market says they want, or at least the companies have been responding with just getting these things bigger and bigger and bigger. So let's take a look. Actually, Matt Russell and Chris Harris again talk about the original generation M5 and those that came after. Let's take a look at that.
Well, there's the history. This year marks 40 years of BMW M. In fact, I want to drive all of the significant cars from BMW M this year. So let's call this the first one of that series. I love the fact that BMW is being beaten by Ford in the European Touring Car Championship and just said, stuff it. And they stole all of Ford's good people, created this new department and built a legacy of amazing cars. So I like the history. The vehicle itself, well, in 1986 I was 11 years old, and when that car was launched I was just about starting to read car magazines, building the obsession, and I couldn't believe the spec on paper. There was this saloon car that looked like a taxi, and it had 286 horsepower. I remember thinking, well, that's a mistake in the magazine. It can't have 286 horsepower, because in those days, that felt like 1,000,000 horsepower. It felt like a bigger power figure than a Veyron has today. I love the engineering. I love the fact it was hand-built in Garching. I love the fact that there were only 187 that came in right-hand drive to the UK. I love the fact that it's so small and it's only 1,550 kilograms, and that even now it feels as fast as it did back in 1986. I love the fact that it's built beautifully, it looks great. I love the shark nose grille, I love the Hofmeister kink, I love all of the design cues, because that era of BMW is the era that I was in love with. It was the one that captured my imagination. Yeah, as you can imagine, I can go on for hours about this car.
The original M5, the first generation, which we brought to the United States, is a 1988 model year. It was the real original bad boy sports sedan, and it brought with it a few key elements which have remained in every generation of M5 since. A very unique steering system. We've had servotronic vehicle speed sensitive steering on every generation of M5. A unique M engine. We've had that in every generation of M5. I think there's a feel. There are the M seats. There's a way that the interior is finished with more leather and reduced glare surfaces like the black headliner and the black dashboard. So we have a number of key design elements which are functional first in the M5 that have always been there, and we maintain those with very modern interpretations now. The first few generations were fairly constant. We had two 6-cylinder powered cars from E28 to E34. The E34 had a more advanced suspension design and was capable therefore of better overall performance, but still was just a big 3.5 liter or thereabouts 6-cylinder with, in this case, 310 horsepower in the United States and eventually 340 in Europe. Probably the most dramatic change in character for the car came with the E39 M5 when we went to a large V8, a 4.9 liter V8, 400 horsepower, and really thereby I think enhanced or advanced the character of the car and also the capability of the car. We'd never seen torque like this in any M car before. So that set a precedent where you had to have just huge power in an M5, and I think that challenged our chassis engineers at M to really develop their ability to keep that power and torque under control. And so the chassis has really developed more drastically in the last two generations of car. The E60 M5 with the V10, again, big power. The current car, the newest car, the F10, huge torque, 500 pound-feet from 1,500 RPM all the way to 5,500 RPM. It takes a very special set of wheels, tires, which, by the way, are considered to be part of the chassis system, and then, of course, the rigid mount, aluminum-intensive suspension as well, to try to keep all of that under control.
So Matt was talking earlier about the increase in size, right? And you know, arguably, these two are the most capable, or by two I mean M5 and M6, are the most capable large M cars that they've ever made, and there are very specific hardware elements that make that possible. The active diff, definitely, the dampers, as Matt actually mentioned that, and also the chassis stiffness. Nelson, of those three, I mean, what's your take on how those have made those cars easier, better to drive as big cars?
Well, damping is huge because it allows you to bridge that sort of gap between comfortable on the street and yet capable on the track, right? Because that's what controls the relationship of the wheels to the body, and that really is the heart of both things.
Yeah.
And that huge range of adjustment, the very quick ability to adjust is hugely important.
The other thing is the active diff, though. I mean, we talked a little bit there.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And the way it puts power down coming out of a corner is really brilliant. I mean, a well-modulated foot can keep the car just on power, smooth and straight out without going instantly into oversteer.
Yeah.
Like a heavily locking mechanical diff can do, right? Clutch type differential. And there's no instance of inside wheel spin like you'll see sometimes with Torsons, especially in a heavy car that's maybe less softly sprung than it could be lifting the inside wheel. It's just a great example of how technology can improve something that's just so basic but fundamental to going fast on track, especially in a big car.
Yeah, and one other thing they're talking a lot about is the rear subframe. I mean, you can really feel the lack of twist or anything in there. I mean, is that something you noticed also? Absolutely,
more so in the M6. The M5, yeah, maybe it's just because it's so long you don't really notice it. But the M6 felt surprisingly crisp, especially running over the rumble strips, things like that might induce a little bit of shake into the car. just none of it.
Yeah. I was really disappointed with the last generation M6, and I just always kind of thought of it as the 68 GTO of German cars. It's a different. This is amazingly different than the previous generation. I mean, obviously, if you're comparing the M5 and the M6, it's 4.5 inches shorter wheelbase, and you're right. I mean, that really makes a gigantic difference, especially on a track like Laguna. But the M6 is really much better, isn't it?
Oh, it's light years better. I mean, it's nearly as fun to drive on track as the M3. It's not quite as quick and responsive, but it's nearly as much fun, which definitely could not be said for the last M6.
Let's go back to Matt Russell. Matt's talking about the M6, the new M6's positioning within the M stable. Let's take a look.
The new M6 takes all the muscle of the M5 and all of the work we do to develop the M5 chassis, and it puts it in an even more emotional package. And it gives it a slightly more athletic edge, too, because the car has a lower center of gravity thanks to its carbon fiber composite roof. It's got a lower overall curb weight by 100 and something pounds. The car is basically a more athletic, more agile version of the M5 in terms of how it works on paper. So we have the same powertrain, 4.5 inch shorter wheelbase when we switch to the M6 from the M5, but all of the muscle is there. All of the chassis development is there. The cars are developed in parallel on the Nürburgring and all of our other test locations around the world, hot weather, cold weather. They have the same cooling package, so they're capable of basically the same things. The difference is that the M6 is definitely a more emotional package, and it brings that agility of the shorter wheelbase.
So all that's real nice, but we're talking about 4,200-pound cars here, right? So what's your take?
For my taste, they could definitely reel it back a bit, but look around the rest of the really high-performance spectrum. I mean, even the Aventador weighs a ton. Well, 2, actually, almost. The ZL1, hugely heavy. CTS-V, incredibly heavy. E63 AMG, they're all heavy cars because that's just where the industry's gone. What's magical is what they can do with all of those cars. Right? And it all comes back to things we were talking about earlier, the diff, the dampers, the chassis stiffness. Now, whether that equates to BMW having lost the plot, I think that all comes back to sort of an ungrounded perspective on what the M car is, right? Looking back at old cars with modern eyes, saying, oh, that M5 is so light, right? Oh, it's so stripped out, it's so minimalistic. It doesn't have all these electronic nannies and features, and yeah, because those things weren't around back then. If they had been, they would have been ordered the same way.
You start with a platform that you have, and then you can tune it only so much. But this is where the auto industry is, and I would stop short of saying they've lost the plot because these are actually really great cars. Do they have the feel of a car from 20 years ago? Obviously not, and nor does anything else.
The cars of 20 years ago were really loud on the freeway. Even an M5 by today's standards was really loud. What you give up, you get a lot back in return.
Yeah. Nelson Ireson, always a pleasure.
Hey, thanks, Mike. Good to see you too, man.
Yeah, no problem. Don't forget to go to Motor Authority and read Nelson's stuff, especially his M5, M6 piece. It's very awesome. Good to see you again. That's it for Road Testament today. We will see you guys next week. Don't forget, let us know what you think at Drive on Twitter. DriveShirts.com if you want not one of these, but a shirt with Drive on it. All right. I'll see you later.